Dr. Rajin Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief call on this part, just to add a little bit more to what my colleagues have just spoken about. And certainly I'm particularly pleased to see Section 35 and the financial or economic abuse being added to the definition of psychological violence, because indeed as we go around and in our constituencies and in our own communities, you see this hidden aspect of violence, where on the face of it much is fine, a home and other resources, but when it comes to taking away from a person the ability to be financially independent to the extent possible is something that has very caustic effects on psychological well-being, but it's a hidden type of abuse. And sometimes difficult to prove as well. Some people, Mr. Chairman, are quite happy to provide the physical resources. When it comes to financial and the independence that comes with it, then it becomes a major difficulty. So my first point is that I'm glad to see that in the definition, and it's something to be supported. But this part of the bill is like the rest of the bill. It's like the curate's egg. Some part of it's very good, and other parts of it are not. The second point that I do appreciate is Part 2A, the codification, if you like, Mr. Chairman, of programs, domestic violence programs. And I think it's a good piece of work where indeed a lot of thought has gone into setting out the definitions of family violence programs, the codification of how they are to work, particularly like the expectations as to how those programs are to work. And indeed, there are any number of programs, Mr. Chairman, where you can refer somebody to a program, but not having any idea of what is to happen when a person who is to receive assistance gets there. It's quite frustrating, because after a while, if the expectations are not clear, the service is not provided properly, what is needed to address the violent behaviour is not provided, and in the end a very good opportunity is lost. The person can sign off and saying, yes, I've gone into this program and I've experienced it, but indeed nothing much changes. So it's good to see the kind of expectations that are laid out in parts of 2A, quite satisfying for me personally. How referrals are to be made are also much better clarified. And finally, judges maintaining a watching brief is also quite important, and that's something we see in the family violence courts already. And so those parts of this section is quite good. But I do want to also add my weight to what my colleague Andrew Little was saying, that if the courts are to provide this service in what is a difficult area of relationships, then they also have to be serviced, particularly when protection orders are granted, but probably as importantly as when an appeal against them takes place. So good in parts, and really pleased to see those two parts of it, Mr. Chairman, but certainly a caution that resources also needs to be provided. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, we come to the vote on Part 2. First, we have the Minister's amendments as set out on SOP number 349. The question is that the Minister's amendments be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that Part 2 is amended stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. A party vote's called for. Party vote's been called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour. 34 votes opposed. Green Party.
14 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
7 votes opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
Mana.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, 3 votes opposed.
Mana.
1 opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
Brendan Horan.
1 opposed.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 60. Part 2 is amended will stand part. We now come to Part 3. This is debate on clauses 56 to 60E. The question is that Part 3 stand part. I call Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Chairman, this really is the not so much the meat of the bill, but the meat and potatoes of the bill. It is the crucial section that establishes a whole new regime